Good afternoon. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." Phosphorus is the 15th element of the periodic table of elements. It is one of 6 biogenic elements needed in large quantities to make life. Phosphorus is an essential component of bone, DNA, RNA, and the energy molecule ATP. Like the oxygen we breathe, phosphorus makes us up in the flesh, and like oxygen, without it we perish. Unlike oxygen, however, environmental phosphorus is relatively rare. This makes phosphorus life-limiting and the most precious of all mineral resources. Whatever phosphorus is, it is not just a molecule. As an ingredient in chemical fertilizers, phosphorus makes industrial society possible, and its seemingly endless supply of cheap food. I began with a reading from the book of Genesis to help us get a handle on the ontology of phosphorus now. In the social sciences and humanities, we take power seriously, but we don't know how to think about fertility. The invention of agriculture in the Neolithic 8 to 10,000 years ago was, among other things, a revolution in soil phosphorus and human fertility. Early horticulturalists were able to concentrate phosphorus into their bodies and communities by farming in the fertile silts of river floodplains. Pastoralists concentrated phosphorus with the help of livestock, who converted indigestible grasses into milk and meat. Human populations expanded. By learning to engineer phosphorus hotspots into the landscapes, our agricultural ancestors created surpluses in the form of grain that gave life to the agrarian state with its priests, slaves, tax collectors, and childbearing women. Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Fast forward to the Green Revolution of the 20th century. The cults of fertility have taken new form. Lithospheric rather than biospheric phosphorus is captured at an accelerated pace. The mining of phosphate rock tracks the accelerated production of nitrogen through the Haber-Bosch process. The great acceleration is on. Human population soars. In the United States, suburbia, the cult of the nuclear family, and microwave dinners proliferate as supermarkets become an everyday technology of phosphorus acquisition. In the Green Revolution, phosphorus materializes as an object of the capitalist sciences: how to find it and mine it, how to refine it, how to price it, how to ship it, mix it, spread it, market it, and let us not forget, flush it. Phosphorus in the Anthropocene gets flushed down the toilet. Phosphorus is human excrement. In this investigation, we excavate the historical ontology of phosphorus inside its technospheric apparatuses of late industrial food systems. In Act 1, Gregory Cushman and Lino Camprubi, in conversation with Scott Knowles, take us into the history and future of phosphate mining and humans' lithospheric relationship with phosphorus. In Act 2, Fertilizing the Plantationocene, Frank Ucotter and Anna Singh give us a tour of the scalable technology of food production and phosphorus massification, the plantation. In Act 3, Eutrophication and Waste, Katrina Schwartz, in dialogue with Heather Davis, discuss the environmental consequences of a leaky phosphorus apparatus, eutrophication. Just as we need to understand carbon in relation to climate change, we need to understand phosphorus in relation to global eutrophication. Through agricultural runoff and sewage discharges, phosphorus transforms marine and freshwater ecosystems through algal blooms. Algae blooms are bad news for 3 reasons. They create environmental toxins, they starve water bodies of oxygen, and they radically transform ecosystem structure. The crisis of eutrophication, like the crisis of phosphate rock scarcity, is barely on our political radar. Arno Rosemarin closes Act 3. In his presentation, Arno shows us how we might replumb the phosphorus apparatus to capture and recycle phosphorus that is currently being flushed away. Arno is a leading light in phosphorus sustainability science. We are honored to have him here today as a presenter and to help us open the program. Arno Rosemarin.
I don't know if this is on. Good afternoon. Really happy to be here. I thank the organizers for inviting me. I'm just going to do a little bit of why we think phosphorus is the Technosphere topic. And what you're going to see today is going to hit it home and you'll really understand. You've heard of the planetary boundaries. The planetary boundaries came out of a scientific group. We're working on resilience in Stockholm at the Stockholm Resilience Center, an organization that my institute, the Stockholm Environment Institute, actually created. And if you can see here, there's a red line here, which is like the boundary for uncertainty or high risk. The one in the middle, this blue one, that is sort of the safe level of space. But there are certain things that we think have gone actually past this red level of alert. One is biodiversity, the other is nitrogen flow into the oceans, and the third one is phosphorus flow. Phosphorus is the single one of all of these things that is not really renewable. It's a finite fossil resource, and it's really the basis for all life. And keeping that picture there, we're going to flip to a fantastic guy in the 1600s. His name is Henning Brand in Hamburg, that, like many alchemists, is searching for the secret formula to take any old metal and turn it into gold or silver. But, I mean, he had great difficulty doing this. One of his experiments, though, was to take his own urine, boil it down, and actually dry it out and heat it at around 280, about 300 degrees centigrade. He finally got down to a very white kind of substance, and then it finally was glowing. It finally just burnt. And he gave it the name Phosphorus, which is Greek for light-bearing. In fact, the name Phosphorus could have easily been Lucifer as well, because that's the other, if you like, research around phosphorescence. But he actually then, in 1669, discovered the thermal process to extract phosphorus. There's about 1.5 grams of pea salts in every liter of your urine. Not a hell of a lot, but you don't need much phosphorus to create life. That's one of the messages, but it's limited. So in terms of introduction, I thought I would just give you some ideas about why it's so important, why it's the limiting nutrient, why it's the limiting factor in the growth of ecosystems. Basically, it's, as Zachary was saying, it's an irreplaceable ingredient for life. It's the building bone or building substance for RNA, DNA, and ATP. And for those of you that don't know much about the physiology, your body has about 250 grams of ATP in it, of your total weight. But it's turning over very, very quickly. So I did a little calculation as to how much ATP you are. I think you're about 100 people here. And while you're sitting here for 3 hours, you will all be producing 1 ton of ATP. So the average person is turning over something, well, just sitting and not doing anything, about 40 kilograms a day. So together you're producing that much. It's the turnover rates. That's the secret of life. Why your body is 37 degrees is because of all of these chemical reactions that are occurring. We just take it for granted. I mean, I could go into this thing about red blood cells. It's about 1/4 of your cells. You produce about 2.5 million per second. A lot of it is ATP driven. What is ATP? Then it's a carrier of 3 phosphate molecules, and 2 of them are breaking off continuously. And you're generating energy and heat from that process. It's the secret to bone. So your mother said, drink milk. But what she did, she said, because of the calcium content, drink milk 3 times a day, 6 times a day. Well, she didn't say the real truth. It's because of the calcium phosphate in it. And this world would be a different world if we all knew, and if it was all labeled on the milk cartons, calcium phosphate. So it's unfortunate that half of the story was never told. You need about 3 grams of the oxide, P2O5. It's about a gram of P every day. So about 1 billion humans don't get that. They're the undernourished people. And then the interesting thing, we heard about it in the other session on the trigger, is Sprengel and Liebig, back in the 1800s, they're saying, what is the limiting factor in growth or biomass or ecosystems? And it turns out to be the Liebig theory that brought forward that phosphorus was actually the compound that could limit growth in forests, lakes, in the oceans. And then the interesting thing is Isaac Asimov, he's actually a general scientist. He would love to be here and address you. He wrote about this in this funny science fiction thing. He couldn't get it published in a normal kind of journal. But it's the mystery of this compound. The fact is that it's around 1% of your body. But if you go out and measure it in the soil or in rocks, not these rocks, these are concentrated sedimentary rocks containing 20%. But normal crust of the earth, it's about 0.1%. So we've got a really interesting problem. We have to get a lot of phosphate into us, but there isn't much out there. So the entire battle of life is around taking it up through plants as primary producers, luxury uptake, and then consuming large amounts of green material. And of course, if you're lazy, you're a carnivore, so you get it even faster. And as a result, because of our ways, and living off of chemical fertilizers, we've managed to be able to figure out how to support 7 billion people, but 6 of which maybe are getting enough food. But this story never really came out to be. I mean, I started sort of doing this about 15 or 20 years ago. It wasn't really until 2009 that one great indicator of knowledge acceptance was an article by a New Jersey physicist, Zachary, in Scientific American. That was the first time, actually, that I ever saw that there was some sort of general acknowledgement about this, how important this compound is. There is complete general ignorance. It is such that we are completely smoke-screened away by carbon, talk about fossil fuels, and climate change. This is the kicker. This is the one that's going to take us down much, much earlier. Look at it over here. Climate change. We're just still in the yellow zone here. We're already into the red over here. Nitrogen isn't going to be discussed today because there's 70% of the atmosphere is nitrogen. There's lots of it, and we know how to extract it. So in fact, nitrogen is just an indication that we're doing something wrong with our agriculture system. But this is the one that's limited, and that's why it's the central object of the Technosphere.